death here. Good afternoon and welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. It's Wednesday. I'm Chris McElwain. I'm covering for the irreplaceable Paul John Dykes. And as much as I would love to say that he's taking a wee break, as you will probably all expect, he is off conducting Acsom business today, pulling together some material for the Friday night edition of This Is Acsom. But look, while I'm sure there'll be a few, oh no, Shooter McGavin's back in the hot seat again. Please take comfort in the fact that I'm joined by the young gun Patrick McGill and the, with the greatest respect, the wily veteran John Yogi Hughes. Gentlemen, how are we both doing today?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good.
Excellent, excellent. Patrick, you doing all right?
Aye, enjoying it. Season well underway now. Celtic are flying. You've got this sort of constant worry of the transfer window. We're not buying anyone with any great speed, and we seem to be selling players at great speed, so that's a bit of a growing concern.
Yeah,
apart from that, we've got, I think it's only 2 games left until the first international break, so I'm enjoying the season so far.
Good, yeah, and I think we've got a fair few items to discuss today. Some are obviously positive. You've always referenced the start to the season. Some good football, 3 wins from 3, League and Cup. Some not so positive items, and it looks like the ongoing interest in Matt O'Reilly is probably likely to transition into him leaving the club. Speculation, I think, ranging between 26 and 28 million pounds, depending on the source. And that's from Brighton. So that one looks as though, to use the Claxon word, maybe imminent or impending. But as of 12:30, I've not heard anything, any announcement yet. So for the moment, he's still our player. Hatate being linked with Leicester City as well, or at least being monitored. And now the most breaking news is that Kyogo is now being linked with a move to Man City. There's also some downright weird items to talk about, in that Celtic are claiming that their new camouflage style kit is, and I'll quote this, inspired by a sea of fan flags and scarves. Our third kit marks 30 years since the end of terracing at Celtic Park. So we'll touch on that if we have time. And then also, our former manager, Neil Lennon, has been sacked by Rapid Bucharest after just 6 matches in charge. And actually, looking at his record, I think it was 5 draws and 1 defeat, which has left him in 12th place. But hardly a crisis, I would have thought on that. But anyway, so there's lots to get through. But let's start with a positive before we head into the recruitment issues. Patrick, 3 wins, as you said, some great football, lots of goals. Some really promising individual performances as well. I say, what have you made of our start to the season, bringing us right up to the most recent Hibs game in the Cup?
It's been a brilliant start. Obviously, the friendlies, we all took great confidence from that. High scoring games. I think we scored. I think apart from the Ayr United game, we scored at least 4 goals in every game. Beat DC United 4-0, Man City 4-3, Chelsea 4-2 or 4-1. And then obviously Queen's Park 6-4. So really exciting games, really good performances. Football looked good. And then since the season's kicked off, we've maybe dipped in the second half in the last game or 2 against Hibs. But, the games were wrapped up in the first half effectively, 2-0 up. So, yeah, quite happy with how the season's gone. It is funny, we're all sort of having a sort of mild panic over the transfer window, and I think rightly so, considering the amount of links we've had with our players leaving, and the sort of, there's a fair bit of rumours, but very few actual incomings with the transfer window. So there is a bit of mild panic. In terms of incomings, it has been quite slow, but I would say the 4 players that have come in have been good. I think they've been good signings. Sinisalo, one for the future, and then Bernardo, Ida, and Kasper Schmeichel looks like the deal of the window so far as a free agent. His passing out the back on Sunday was immense, and he looks like a really good buy. But the signings that we've had so far have been good. I think we need at least another 2, plus replacing anyone that goes. I sort of accepted O'Reilly was leaving, about a year ago when he was first linked with Madrid. So if he goes, no big heartbreak. We need another centre mid. But now that we're talking about Hatate and Kyogo, it really is panic time, because as much as we'll bring in, I'd like to think we'll bring in over 50 million for those three players, closer to 60 or 70 if all three of them were to go, but especially to English Premier League teams. But to replace them so late on, unless we have a massive backup plan, which we're not exactly known for, and we can replace them in the drop of a hat, then I think it would be panic stations if all three of them left. But, O'Reilly, I've accepted it. Hopefully we can get a player in to replace him, and then a left back and a centre half.
Yeah, that's what we spent a lot of time talking about. And look, we are on the countdown now. I think we've got just shy of 10 days to do any sort of business in the recruitment window. We hope that that's going to involve some significant incomings as well. And look, to give a little bit of balance and a little bit of maybe credit where it's due, we have as a club rebuffed what we view as low ball offers from O'Reilly, from Atalanta rather. But I think, when you get anything that looks as though it's coming in over the 25 million record, which I think was set by Tierney and Jota, it's going to be very difficult, I think, to imagine the club rejecting that. Now, John, given our oft-quoted excellent financial health and the fact that we are, what are we now, the best run or one of the best run football clubs in the world, and look, not making any assumptions about any players' wishes or desire to stay or leave at this point, is the O'Reilly deal, if we start with that one, and I'll come to Kyogo and Hatate in a minute, but is the O'Reilly deal, would you consider good business and in keeping with our recent recruitment and sales strategy, or is it actually a lack of ambition, given that, through this great financial position, we don't actually need to sell our best players?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's definitely a lack of ambition, but we're supposed to be a trading club. Now, there are elements of that are clearly just not in place. Matt O'Reilly's never going to be worth more than he is just now, despite what people are saying he might, so let's say he gets a few games in the Champions League, unless he's unbelievable and we as a club are unbelievable, then he's still not going to be worth any more than he's worth just now. Brighton are a good club. They were 11th last year. They were 6th the year before that, got European football. They haven't been in a relegation battle since I think the year after they came up. So they're a decent middle of the table side. They'll be paying stupid money, stupid wages, all of that stuff. So, it's up to Matt if he wants to go. It's a decent enough move. Be surprised if he doesn't want to go. So, and at that point, you've got to let him. And again, he does more of the same for us this year. And is he going to be worth any more? Is he going to feel as if he's achieved any more? From our point of view, from my point of view, it's absolutely heartbreaking. As much as you said, no heartbreak. There's definitely heartbreak. He is a phenomenal player, one of the best players I've seen in a very long time. He's a phenomenal player, and he's at the heartbeat of everything creative in that midfield. So, it's going to be a very, very, very sore loss. A very sore loss, because it doesn't matter. But this comes back to these other guys as well. If we were to sell them, the issue is, will we replace them? And how do we replace them? Will we buy someone of equivalent standard? Well, I don't know. Why don't we ask the double denim wearing, bumblebee strip sporting, brazen head visiting Louis Palmer?
Absolutely. He said that. I was trying to think if I've been to the Brazen Head.
So that's what we got for Jota. So we've got a guy who's basically, he's barely a first team starter, and so if we were to replace these guys, I think it would be, if all that was to happen just now, I think it would be catastrophic, because there is no chance we can't even get close to replacing them on a like for like basis. So we're going to be bringing in 3 guys with potential that we hope can do better. Even if it's expensive potential, it'll still be potential, because we'll not replace them, with the finished article. We can't. So to lose that many would be catastrophic. And replace them with potential, expensive potential, as I say. But does anyone think that would happen? between now and the end of the window. We've got 9 days so far, the entire summer. We've signed a guy that was on a free transfer, probably about to hang up his boots. A young fella who's a replacement for, second or third choice keeper, and 2 guys that were here last year, and that's only just been done. So, I think it's pushing the bounds of credibility to suggest that we would do any significant business between now and the end of this window in order to replace that many guys. I'd be very surprised. If you got to even replacing Matt O'Reilly, if you replace him with 2 players, then you've got to offload other guys.
Yeah.
Probably you have to get home out on loan or something like that. So it's not. It's a long way from ideal. The O'Reilly thing was always a possibility, but here's what gets me. You talk about Brighton, and their recruitment strategy, and you're sort of reading up on it, and it's exactly what ours should be. Because when Matt O'Reilly, never mind when he was first at the end of every season or during every season, they should have been saying, how much is he worth potentially? If he goes, who can we replace him with? Where are those guys just now? What situations are contracts? How likely is it we can get them? What are their wages? And if he'd been flopped or he'd had an injury, then okay, how do we get rid of him? Or what do we do? Yeah, it's just you have to be constantly proactive. You have to have a functional scouting network, which we do not, and you have to have a football department, which we do not. We have a transfer process. We do not have a transfer strategy. We've got a vague notion of what we want to do, depending on which manager's in charge at the time. You want to buy guys in and then sell them for more. Great. That's not a strategy. There need to be more foundation to it than that. These structures need to be in place. We just don't have anything like that. So that's why you struggle to believe they'll get the job done before the end of the transfer window, even to replace O'Reilly, because we just don't have enough people working on it. There isn't enough information. Everyone's going to know we are absolutely minted, yet we're still arguing over contracts as if we're broke. What I mean? And we don't have any leverage. People are going to say, look, you've made it very clear. You've got at that stage, you might have 150 million in the bank. What, you want to argue over a couple of million? Away you go and raffle. And people won't do it. And that's why the Ida thing, I think, was so difficult as well. Although I did hear Norwich were looking for really stupid money for him there in the middle of a takeover. So, apparently that money was very important. They were looking for about 13 million. But, Kyogo might struggle to go because, the shoulder injury and that needs surgery, I imagine. But Hatate, the notion of losing, how good has that midfield been this year? We're so far above everywhere else.
This was exactly the point I was going to make, is I think, outside of what you've spoken about, John, if he goes, I think one of the most tragic aspects for me is the fact, apart from, whatever decent sum we get in, it's that we've looked for the first time since, I would say, before the start of last season, that we've got a solid, effective and really top-class midfield that are gelling together, that are working, you would like to think, to the manager's plans and the manager's design. And it's been one of the key reasons for such a positive start, because even in that last game there against Hibs, where I felt as O'Reilly wasn't quite hitting his usual standard, Hatate was stepping up. And I thought that, what you're seeing there is you're seeing 3 players who are working very, very well together. I've never seen, or at least not for a long time, I've seen Kalmak look quite so comfortable in the role he's playing in the team. And I know it's only the start of the season, it's only a couple of games. But let's say if Matt O'Reilly leaves, we know that Leicester's obviously monitoring Rio Hatate, as we said. The link with Kyogo today, and I know there's a real tentativeness about the link with Kyogo. I think a lot of people are a bit panicky because it came from Fabrizio Romano, who tends to have a relatively decent record in terms of predicting or monitoring transfers. But it could ultimately be worse than we think about, and that's the top half of the part of the spine of the team, right? Bear in mind, this is a trio that have played together for the bulk of pre-season, have started each of the 3 games. That's your settled midfield. I know we've brought in Bernardo, but outside of, say, Bernardo, who I would probably not put in the category of being a downgrade, who else in the squad at this moment in time steps up to replace any one of those players? Not just Matt O'Reilly. I mean, Patrick, do we have anyone outside of Bernardo that could maybe step in and continue the momentum we've built, do you think?
No, I don't think there is, unfortunately. As John says, that midfield 3 have been outstanding, and Aaron Moy's broken into it, and I think Rogic was in there for a period in Ange's first season, but that midfield 3 for the past 2, 3, 4 years has been exceptional for Celtic, and it's probably been the first choice midfield. I mean, Iwata has came in and played well, but I don't think you're having the same sort of dynamic as what you have just now. Because I think, you'd either have him sitting with McGregor or McGregor goes forward a bit. Bernardo can come in. I think he offers something different. You've seen that in the cup final, the game at Ibrox. He likes to drive forward. But it's as I've said, as I'm sure you both agree, it would be a different type of midfield to the one we've seen the past 3-4 games. And it is a shame, it is a heartbreaker because we've been playing so well in pre-season and in these 3 games. So it would certainly be different. I think Bernardo's a great player with a lot of potential. I think if O'Reilly does go, and I expect him to go, to be honest, I would really, really hope to think that we'll get another central midfielder in. We've been linked with, I think he's Polish, the guy in the MLS, LAFC.
Mateusz
He looks
Bogusz, I think his name is. I probably completely butchered it. I think it's Mateusz Bogusz, and apologies if I've totally got that name wrong. But yeah, attacking midfielder, 22 years old, was formerly of Leeds. He's now in the MLS, and there are rumours that talks are underway between the clubs. But as I say, they're just rumours at this point in time. So yeah, he seems to fit the profile, right? I mean, you look at that, and I don't think there's anything about that basic rundown of that player that you wouldn't expect to be a target for Celtic given our recruitment history. I mean, look, we're in, and this is, I'm conscious I don't want this to be doom and gloom all the time, and we've done recruitment for what seems like forever now, but O'Reilly looks as though, just by virtue of the interest, by virtue of the amount of reports that he's likely to go, but if he goes with less than 10 days in the transfer window, we're already 1 key first team player down. Not even a squad player here. We're talking about a key first team player. Hatate goes, that's 2 first team players. Kyogo goes, that's 3 first team players. 10 days, and as much as to coin your famous phrase, Patrick, we've got hunters of money. 10 days is not a lot of time to do enough business really to put us in a position where, okay, look, we might still dominate domestically because, let's face it, our rivals are nowhere at the moment. But we are opening the door and say, come at us if we do that. But we're definitely not prepared for Europe, are we?
No, not in any sense. We're prepared to participate, and that appears to be the height of ambitions the last few years. But to actually compete and attempt to win a couple of games, we don't seem. I mean, it is just 1 or 2 tweets when it comes to Kyogo and Hatate. I think Hatate was only one journalist. Kyogo, there's obviously a very credible source who's told a number of journalists. I think the Athletic are running with it. I think the New York Times actually reported on it, Fabrizio Romano. So there's obviously definitely something in the Kyogo thing. Hatate, a bit less so, but we can't be selling all these 3 guys. To lose O'Reilly, as I say, I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'd accepted this months ago. Just because of the height of the interest, the sheer number of links, and it does look as if that's going to happen. The fact that we've not got anyone in is a worry. Maybe the theory was, in my mind, at the end of last season, that Bernardo would be the replacement and Lawal and Kelly would step up. That's definitely not happening because they're both gone. So we definitely need to sign someone else. We had this Engels link last week. We've got Bogusz today. Hopefully it's not a bogus rumour. You know what I mean?
You got a Bogusz player. Just imagine.
I mean, the fees reported that. I'm not sure how accurate it is, but I'm sure I've seen 8 million was the link with Bogusz, and 9 million was the rumoured fee for Engels. So
is that not just a bogus story?
That's it. It started. John started it. This is what we're going to get. I kind of want us to sign him now, just so we've got enough dad joke material for the next few months. I mean, look, yeah, Patrick, I can't disagree with anything you've said. I think I'm going to throw a point over to John, and I've been saving this one for you, John. So me and Patrick might sit back and let you go with this one. But I mean, look, we've spoken a lot over the past few months. We've talked about elements like fan engagement, right? Transparency, strategy, all these buzzwords, these Acsom words. And look, now the club's doing their usual multi-merch, fleece the fan base throughout the season with the latest effort, the new third kit reveal. I mean, you put aside the really flimsy association with the jungle and the scarves and all that kind of nonsense. The marketing strategy, like trying to tap into fan sentiment, they're trying to charge these stupid exorbitant fees for products that, let's be honest, a lot of supporters and families, they simply can't easily afford that, particularly the prices they're charging. Now, look, every club, every sports franchise, I see it all the time with F1 as well, which is the other sport I follow. They push out merchandise at idiotic prices. But as fans, do we not have some degree of right to know how the funds that are being generated from this and other streams are being spent? I mean, you take our CEO, right? You take our chief officer, Michael Nicholson. Now, he's on a reported 700 grand a year. Don't quote me on that. That's just something I've seen reported. Does he not have some responsibility to try and engage with the fans in a sense to try and justify his role and those of others that are responsible for the well-being of the club, not just off the park, but more importantly on the park?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is, and there never has been really adequate communication from the CEO, whether it was this one or the previous one, in terms of what the ambitions are. Because if you let people know what those ambitions are, you can be held accountable for failing. And nobody wants that, so why would they bother? They just, take great joy in us being dominant domestically and couldn't give a monkeys about the rest of it because it doesn't suit the investment strategy. But as I said last week, this is a PLC board, and their only responsibility is to the shareholders.
Yeah.
Not to us. If you're not a shareholder, they have no responsibility to you other than the fact, like any business, they don't want to annoy people to the point they start to leave. In terms of the strategy, I mean, I joked about it on Twitter this morning. That third kit coming out, I say, the way that the fans are exploited is outrageous, and I've just ordered mine. And I have ordered it this morning. So there you go. There's no way I'm not getting a camouflage top. You kidding? Around here? That's absolutely fantastic. Sure. So that would previously have been the what you would have expected from the sort of South Armagh Celtic supporters club. So as I'm in Celtic, South Armagh, then that would suit me fine. But yeah, no, let's just say that's a tenuous link. And if they didn't, graphically speaking, if they didn't realise what it looked like, someone might have clued them in. But again, I don't know if we're going to get a matching camouflage balaclava, but we'll see. But it's definitely controversial. We'll say that, and it is quite funny making jokes about it. But it's a good-looking kit, to be fair.
It's always to get the third kit from a wee fella. I think I quite liked the one last year. It was a good one to get for the wee fella. It's not quite as kind of in your face, but I've seen, just to your point, I've seen a fair few memes and Photoshop efforts at the moment with the balaclava areas and God knows what else.
The thing about it is, it's 70 quid. So I'm buying for me as a tragic old man who shouldn't be wearing football shirts. But if you've got a family, that's unbelievable amounts of money. Unbelievable amounts of money. Now,
as if just to emphasise your point there, Mickey Boy comes in with a great comment. We'll probably also sell Kyogo to Man City, CCV to Atalanta, and Hatate to Leicester. Feeling definitely articulating the fears. But just to your point, I've brought out 3 new shirts at £70 and £55 for the kids, £540. Thanks, Celtic, but we're the best run club in Britain. Well, it'd be nice to see that reflected, maybe in some gesture towards the fans. So,
you're talking about best run. What you're essentially saying is we have the best fan base. We have the fan base who's willing to invest, a large fan base that is willing to invest in the club. Do we have the best marketing department of all the clubs in Britain? No, nonsense. Do we have, what special things is it that we are doing that makes us the best run club in Britain, other than milking the fan base for all the money?
Yeah.
Does that make us the best run club in Britain? I don't think so. I think we just happen to have a fan base who love the club where it's more than just about the football, but it's a cultural thing, and they want to be part of that. I've got that much Celtic gear in there. I don't know what to do it, and then you get people there this morning. I made that joke on Twitter. People say, "Well, if you keep investing, nothing's ever going to change." It's just that strategy of withholding. I'm not going to buy a season ticket, or I'm not going to buy the gear. If you think that's going to work, you're delusional, because it is never going to work on the volume that it would need to be. People won't do it. Yep. You might be that annoyed that you're giving up your season ticket, but there's a 7-year waiting list of people behind you. I'll take it quite happily. You might be annoyed that that's the third kit, but maybe you've already bought the first two, and even if you don't buy it, it doesn't matter. We have merch sales, at an incredible level. So the notion that that's what's going to happen, we need to force change either through the shareholders or through talking to the club, or whatever it's going to be. But even there, I use the word force change. You can't force change. They're a PLC board, and they're quite entitled to ignore you and look at the money. You look at the money in the bank, lads. That is the responsibility of a PLC. People are saying, "Oh, they're more than that." We're not more than that. That's what we are. We are a PLC. There's dangers in being a PLC. There's dangers in being privately owned. You need to be very careful what you wish for in these circumstances. But you like to think they're Celtic-minded people, so they're not going to, completely get out of control and just start exploiting us and putting Gabriels on the pitch. But we're back to this point. So it's come up in what we're going to talk about today, but I've been talking about this since I came on this show. It's the same thing. Nothing has changed. We thought something had changed with when Ange came in, but actually nothing had changed. It was all just Ange behind the scenes. We thought there was other people doing it, and we're going to get a scouting department and all the rest of it. We don't have. That's what I'm saying. We're a trading club without the ability to scout for players. Without it's an absolute farce. And the fact that it's not been dealt with after all this time, I mean, some Celtic fans could, quote you chapter and verse for the last 20 years of everyone that's come out and everyone that's come in, and how many of them have been a shambles, and how many of them have been good. Now, don't get me wrong, they've managed to uncover, Matt O'Reilly is a sensational bit of business, but how do we replicate that? How do we make it so that it's not just a one-off? And why can't, as Brendan Rodgers very clearly indicated, why can't we buy £6 million players and sell them for 40? Yep. Why are we buying £1.5 million players and selling them for, what was the stat I heard the other day? If you buy a player under £3 million, he's a 16% chance, right, of becoming a first-team starter and being sold on for decent money. If you spend more than £6 million, that's an 89% chance that he will achieve those targets. So why are we still even attempting to shop in that market? But the problem is, once you get out there into the big bad world, there's a lot of competition for those players. So it's not enough to just have a handful in mind and hope that those come to fruition. And, be constantly engaging with those guys all through the summer at the expense of engaging with 4 other guys as your fallback position. It's the Eddie Howe situation all over again. It's basically, that's not the way you have to conduct transfers. You have to be negotiating with multiple people at the same time. And I just don't think we have the logistical capability of doing anything like that. Anything. As I said last week, it's basically Brendan and the guy Lefebvre, and that's it.
Yeah.
And a couple of boys that are doing some occasional scouting, and that is it. So one of them's a first-team coach. That's his job. The other one is sitting there on his own, doing global recruitment for us.
Yep.
And Michael Nicholson's arguing over coins to try and get these deals in the door. Now, if that's not what's happening, then tell us. Because if I'm completely wrong, I'd be delighted to be completely wrong. If there's a whole complex situation going on behind the scenes, and those two guys are just cogs in a massive machine, which is responsible for our global recruitment, then tell us. Let us know what it is. And as you're saying earlier on about communicating, we don't communicate in it. We don't have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a 20-year plan. We don't have anything. We also don't have a CEO who likes to do press. Now, from his point of view, I can almost understand why. He's got a PR department, as they say, why have a dog and bark yourself? But at the same time, it's... at the same time, the PR department isn't who people want to talk to, and that's not the way that messages should be delivered. And he does have a responsibility to talk to the fans, but who's he going to talk to? Because it's only, if he sits in a fans forum, he'll get absolute pelters. So then it's only going to be softball questions from someone who's already pre-approved their Celtic media. So, is it even worth it? Is it even worth it? But look, I mean, all the issues we had are the issues that we still have, which is incredibly frustrating. And, that's a very good point, whoever that was in the comments there just said, I hope we have a 9-day plan. A 2-year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan. I hope we have a 9-day plan. And I agree entirely. And absolutely do not. We do not. And even if we did, the chances of us getting those deals done, it appears, are slim to nil. So this could have gone from, potentially, I'm not panicking yet. Hatate's gone nowhere. Kyogo's gone nowhere. He's got that shoulder injury. That might put them off. The problem with Kyogo is he got the new agent, and new agents try to drum up, a transfer for him. You don't switch agents unless you've got ideas about doing something like that. So that's the one thing we need to bear in mind. But that injury might prevent him going, at least in this window. But he might opt to, if he opts in to get the surgery, we might lose him until the point that he's fit to come back and then get a transfer. It could be, doubly bad news for us. But look, nobody's gone anywhere yet. So, but the problem is, we've all had this experience before. We know what the
anxiety
is like. We know what's likely to come, and it's very difficult not to project ahead to that point because we've not been proved wrong many times in the past. So, look, let's hope that things go our way. I would not be optimistic.
Yeah, as I said, when Paul John asked me to do this, I said to him on with his Big John and on as usual. I said, right, great, that's fine. We'll just put this point to him and we'll let him go, Patrick. Right, that's what we.
I didn't appreciate you interrupting me. By the way, I've got another 15 minutes to do.
I'm sorry, I'm still not as polished at this as possible. And actually, as if to emphasise that point, there was a comment made as you were going there, which says we need Big John on the board. Now it was made by a chap called, I think it was James Kennedy. Now, Paddy Lavery will attest to this, that when I try and bring up these comments on the stupid device that I'm using at the moment, I occasionally accidentally, instead of starting the comment and bring it up, I pop them in timeout, and I've done it again. So I'm going. So, Dave, if you're watching, firstly, I apologise. Secondly, I will go on to Paul John and we'll get you unbanned. So that was on me. That was on me. But just making you aware, if you do get banned from this, there's a good chance it's probably not intentional and it's just me being hopeless at working on this. But look, listen, it does sound like we're being overly negative. But I think the point you make, John, which is really important, is there's never been a precedent set, at least not in recent years, to alleviate any of these concerns and these fears. We have had these discussions. I mean, I've been listening to you guys on this podcast for a couple of years now, and it seems like we're retreading old ground, but it's because we've never, to an extent, we've never been thrown a bone. We've never been thrown to say, something that upsets the equilibrium. I'm gonna try not to say that again. But okay, we had success with Carter Vickers, we had success with Jota. We keep going back to those. We had massive failures with big outlays with guys like Barkas, Ayeti. So some you win, some you lose. But what we want to see though is we want to see the statement of intent. We want to see the ambition. It doesn't matter if we spend 10 or 11 million and it turns out to be a flop. At least the board has proven that they've done it, that they've actually said, well, you know what? We might not have maybe got our scouting right, or maybe the player didn't adapt the way we thought he did, but we were prepared to take the chance on them. At the moment, this board looks like it's very, very risk averse. I mean, look, 10 days to go, Patrick, right? We have the potential of losing 3 key players, but as John rightly says, none of them are out the door at the moment, right? So it's not immediate panic stations. But what do you want to see when those 10 days are up? What's the minimum you would want to see to say, okay, do you know what? I'm kind of okay with this situation. So how do we avert a potential crisis and people bringing inflatable sharks to protest?
Well, we can't sell all 3. I mean, that would be a ridiculous situation to find ourselves in. Even if all 3 players want to go, you just can't do that. So I think O'Reilly will leave, as I've said before. I've accepted that we need to get a replacement in. The minimum I think is a left back, a centre back, and replace anyone that leaves. So therefore, a centre midfielder, assuming Kyogo Hanatate stay. I'm undecided on Kyogo. There's been sort of murmurings all summer, and he didn't quite fit into Brendan's plans last year, and he's obviously changed agent, and Man City can sort of do what they like. So I'm a bit worried about that one. Less so about Hatate. I don't think he'll leave. So in my opinion, we need to get those 3 players in: left back, centre half, and centre midfield. My worry is the way that they were sort of managing this situation. There's been very few rumours about left backs and centre halves. I mean, you had Scott McKenna, and you've had 1 or 2 others. He's now sort of off the radar.
Yep.
You've had Owen Beck, you've had Bueno, he's now left. Lund was a link last week, but they don't seem to build up the way that O'Reilly to Atalanta, or O'Reilly to anyone has sort of built up, and you think, well, that's inevitable. I think I didn't actually hear him say this, but I've heard it repeated that Brendan says that Scales is our backup left back, which is quite interesting because he's currently our first choice left centre half. So you've got to wonder what we're playing at here with the squad. Welsh is sort of injured half the time. Naroki is injured half the time. Kobayashi is part of the car share with James McCarthy and Kwon and all those boys. So he's not getting a game. And Gustav Lagerbielke, I think, is off to Holland on a loan. So we don't have a great. I seen that link yesterday. I don't know how true it is, but apparently he's going to head on loan to Holland, was the rumour.
I think it is.
So we've not got great depth in the centre half positions, and yet our starting centre half is allegedly the backup left back. So I think we actually still have quite a lot of work to do in those 2 areas. And they are, I don't know your guys' opinions, they are by far and away our 2 weakest positions in that starting 11, in my opinion. I mean, not even counting squad depth, where you basically don't have backup for either of them. But I mean, every team, it was in the Champions League, it's now domestically, are targeting our left-hand side. Because, Taylor's small, he's probably the weakest in that defence. Scales I thought played really well against Hibs. He obviously played really well the first half of last season, but he's not consistent enough to be the starting centre half at Celtic, especially if you want to compete in Europe.
And we gave up a goal from a set piece again.
We did give up a goal from a set piece, John. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a couple of really good points that Patrick makes there. I'm watching a Hibs game. There was one moment, just a capture on screen where I think we were defending some sort of situation. I don't think it was where they scored, but we're defending some sort of situation. I saw Taylor standing in the box surrounded by 3 Hibs players, and it was like a scene from The Lord of the Rings. It was like men standing next to a hobbit. Now, I mean that with the greatest respect to Greg Taylor. Listen, yeah, he's not. I think he's a bit weirder than me. No much. I'm very much in the Hobbit camp. But the point is, when you saw such a disparity in height. And he's in the box, and he's obviously trying to mark at least one of those players. And I just thought that's so unfair. That's like a fixed boxing match. It was just, there was no chance. It was it was absolutely so unfair. Now,
I do love the fact, Chris, that you say, with all due respect, very much like the Sopranos would say, with all due respect, and follow it with a brutal insult.
I know. No, listen, I'll balance it up. I thought, actually, since the start of the season, I think Taylor looks excellent going forward. He looks actually as comfortable as I've seen him in a Brendan Rodgers system. Because we know last year he was obviously trying to adapt from moving out of that inverted wing back to playing more akin to a traditional wing back. I think he's been excellent going forward. I think some of his passing's been great. His work rate has been excellent. Looks quite fit as well. Listen, his defensive frailty, as we say, and I think it is largely restricted to those kind of high balls, the long crosses coming in. It's not really something he can change. I mean, trust me, I've been trying to grow bigger for the best part of 40 years. It's not going to happen. But the point is that it is a point of weakness that teams, as Patrick correctly said, they are starting to target. And I think any team worth their salt that have done a bit of scouting will have looked back at last year's Champions League, will have looked back at some of the goals we conceded domestically last year and said, there's our route in. There's how we hurt this team. What I would like to see is, rather than say someone coming in to replace Taylor, and I've said this to Paul John a few times, is have a plan B. Have someone that comes in and does a different job to Taylor in that position. So whereas Taylor's very good going forward, he's great when you're on the front foot and you're attacking teams and you're trying to cut them apart. When you're under the cosh a little bit, or you're playing against teams which are putting you under a bit of pressure, or you're trying to hold a lead, bring in somebody that solidifies the back line, that gives you that aerial defensive prowess, that gives you that physicality, that maybe even some of that defensive positional awareness that maybe Taylor, he doesn't necessarily have that strength. Is that, John, for you, the kind of players we should be bringing in? Not necessarily like for like replacements, maybe just slightly better quality, but actually looking at players that can do a slightly different job to what we've got available. Because our first team at the moment, before any outgoings, doesn't look that bad.
Yeah, well, Greg's always been great in the front foot. That's never been the issue. But the problem is when we get put under pressure by better opposition than we play a lot of the time, week in, week out, then it's a very, very, very obvious weakness. And of course, people started to exploit it last year. They will do so again. He just gets monstered at the back post. And again, it's not even necessarily a positioning issue. It's just, a lot of the top players are big, strong, powerful, and athletic. And Greg has many attributes, but the one that's really missing there, as you point out, is big. There's very little he can do to combat that, other than he would have to be unbelievably good positionally, never letting guys get goal side of him. And the problem is, further from that, the way that he plays means that he's frequently halfway up the pitch, and we are getting counter-attacked on. So he needs to get back, and then at the set pieces, we know it's an issue. But the one thing I would say about that set piece that was given up, that was nothing to do with Taylor. I think that fell in between Matt O'Reilly, CCV, and a couple of other players.
It did.
We have a problem defending set pieces. And Scales wasn't involved in that either. The whole idea about Scales being left back was one thing the manager said last year, and I think we've sort of rubbished that already. I don't think it's the case at all that he could possibly believe he's going to play left back, especially Miovski's injured, so Lagerbielt's away, and people talk, the squad looks great until you start picking holes in it. So what happens if Greg Taylor gets injured? Just very simply, what happens right now if Greg Taylor gets injured? Is Tony Ralston going to play there? Because that's the only other option that I can see. It would have to be Ralston.
A youngster coming through,
Montgomery, when was the last time anyone saw Montgomery? So it's I think we have some serious issues, because all it takes is a wee ankle knock, all it takes is a twisted knee. The things that happen in every single game, the things that gave us problems last year, it wasn't until the end of last year we started clicking, because guys were back from injury, and now we're starting this season with a threadbare squad, right? Extremely threadbare in certain positions. And all it takes is a knock. All it takes is stopping, turning too fast the wrong way, a calf strain, any sort of injury. And all of a sudden, the first team starts to look really, really ragged because the squad is not deep enough with quality, not even close. I mean, the fact that we sat there and spoke about all that time about potentially trying to replace Matt O'Reilly, and Hatate and Kyogo, and we only then, come back to, wait a minute, what happened to the left back and the centre back and the winger that we needed before any of this kicked off? Yep. We still haven't improved the team, and we're about to sell our base player, and the team is no better than it was last year. Now, it's playing well at the moment, but a couple of injuries and taking the right way out of it could easily change that. Yep. So, they're probably going to get away with it again, and they're going to try and sell us in the fact that, it's definitely improvement, or we get quality, or there's no point in buying people in, unless they are better quality. It's not acceptable. You're getting paid $3 million a year. Michael Nicholson's getting 770,000 plus bonuses, right? So, there's guys there getting paid $4 million a year or more to come and say, I tell you what, this job's dead hard. So it is, it's dead hard. That's the point. And if you can't do it yourself, you need to get people in to help you. You need to build that structure around you that's not good enough that we will be left threadbare if this happens. So, look, I mean, the point is we're being accused of being negative, but at the same time, it's just been realistic. So show me the time it didn't pan out that way. Also, going back to what it was Ridiculizer or someone made a comment there saying the epitome of what's wrong, slagging the board and then being defeatist about making any change. Not being defeatist about making any change. I am saying you're not going to make the change by trying to starve the board of funds. It's not going to happen. You will not get enough people to agree to it. You wouldn't even get enough people to agree to it on this podcast or in that comment section. If you say, I'm going to give up my ticket, see how many people agree with you. If you say, I'm going to stop buying all my merch, see how many people agree with you. It has to come from another direction, like the Celtic Trust or, some other avenue. And I don't know what that is. Yeah. Because they don't have to listen to it. Unless you have a significant shareholding, and that would be a very significant shareholding, they don't have to listen to you. So it's not being defeatist. Those are the facts. So it's not going to work one way, and it's very, very difficult to get it done the other way. We have to keep agitating for it. We have to keep letting them know how we feel about it. But at the end of the day, how that change is going to come about, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, is that we don't have a cause or an approach or a strategy to really get behind. We don't talk about, we give up tickets, we stop buying the merch, we vote with our feet, that kind of thing. But ultimately, it's what body or collective is actually prepared to do that, and how do you know that it's going to have the effect that you want? So yeah, I think what you've articulated, John, there is it's the frustration that we're all feeling. It's the rinse and repeat of we're another recruitment window. And the one thing, I've referenced that a few times since I was last on with you, the biggest frustration is the potential is there. We have the potential to grow as a football team, to really compete on the European stage, to absolutely increase the distance between us and our nearest rivals domestically, by a huge margin. And yet we miss the opportunity. We never seem to grasp the opportunity. And I know there's counter arguments to say, well, you want to have a competitive domestic league. You really don't want, Rangers to get liquidated again, and to I say again, the Rangers to get liquidated for the first time. Shameless plug there. I'm actually going out with a mate who's a Rangers fan at the weekend. I'll get that one in the neck. But the point is, right, we've got so much potential. We've got the ability to grow. It's not our problem what's happening on the other side of the city. They can deal with their own house. We've got a club that, for all the great accolades we're getting about how well financially we run how brilliantly we, how brilliantly we're managed, and how solvent, and great and all this kind of thing, and we've got an elite level manager, depending on your viewpoint about Brendan's ability. I think he's managed at the elite level. That's enough for me. But we don't capitalise on it. We don't capitalise on any of the advantages we've got. We seem content with the status quo, and that may be great if you're on the board or your show, but it's not great as a fan, because what we want to see is progress on the park and progress in the European stage and that kind of thing. So, changing it up a wee bit, I want to bring in a couple of the comments just to make sure it's not just all about us sitting moaning, but bring Danielle in, one of our regular commenters. So Danielle saying you can put under any, I think that's supposed to say you can't under any circumstances let Kyogo and Matt O'Reilly go in the same window. Need to promise Kyogo he can go in the summer and set a lowest release clause or something like that, so he can basically choose. So fair point, I think. Another regular, Stephen Sloan. So we need 3, maybe 4 players in, and we have a week to do it. Am I in the twilight zone? Is that seriously how a Champions League club is run? It beggars belief. I can't argue with any of that. Not first up today for once, but no less valuable comment. Jungle Lion, have to say the constant non-signings and the constant talk of Celtic players leaving is such a kick in the teeth for Celtic supporters. It really is. I think the point that comes with that, John, is the fact that all the speculations about our best players leaving, we're not getting the equivalent, targets likely to come in, big players that look as though they could come in and do the job that would soften the blow. That's not happening.
But the thing about it is, the people are saying, it's negative and moan. But that's what's happening. That's the reality. That's all we've got to work with. We haven't even been linked with a likely left back. We haven't been linked with a likely centre back.
No.
We haven't even been linked with a decent winger. And that's the guys that we needed before this started. So who are we going to be linked with? Who's Matt O'Reilly's replacement? Are we seriously saying there's a guy just sitting there, we've got that fella in the bag? No, we're going to be scrambling to try and replace Matt O'Reilly, and then these other things aren't going to get done.
Yep.
It's not been negative to say that it's unlikely that the Celtic, it's not even the board, the Celtic team, the management team, the way it is structured currently, are not capable of getting 4 or 5 deals done in 9 days. I'm just not sure they have the actual capacity to do that. If you think about the extensive negotiations that are required. So, look, I think we all would like to be wrong, but I've liked to be wrong before. I said in January nothing would happen. Nothing happened. Because people were saying we were going to get it all sorted out then. We're going to get 10 players in, or get rid of all that, and basically we ended up with 2. It's difficult. We're not trying to be negative, but it is a kick in the teeth, as Jungle Lion says, because all we're getting is your best players are about to leave just when things look good. The team are playing exceptionally well. That pre-season was the best pre-season I think I've ever seen.
It is, yeah.
I know it's just pre-season, but those results matter, because those, especially Man City, Chelsea, they're a week behind us and all the rest of it. Those players, one of them, like Man City are playing their youth. How much are their youth players? I would suspect they've spent more on individual youth players than we have spent in our entire squad. What I mean? So it's a nonsense to suggest that. So we've been playing exceptionally well, and then instead of adding to it, what it's looking like is we're going to lose it. It's starting to be taken to pieces. So yeah, I mean, it's really difficult not to be frustrated. I'm sorry if that's not positive enough for some people, but it's very difficult not to be frustrated.
Absolutely not. And you know what? See, for balance, I'm going to bring Les and says, come on, everyone, while the doom and gloom, the transfer window is still open. No one is leaving. We'll have at least another top 3 signings coming in. Our board of everything in hand. I'm going to take that with a very large pinch of salt, that comment. But, I mean, look, you're right. What our fears are based on what we're anticipating is going to happen. There is every possibility that we might be surprised. John, as you say, we've been waiting for it for a couple of years. Maybe this is a year. We've got 10 days. Maybe we've got a short list of players that are just all ready to sign on the dotted line. It could be the case. It's just the fact that we've not had that or any reason to have that degree of optimism in the past. I mean, for those who are watching, we've got a kind of a private Acsom group chat, which I'm privileged to be part of now. But just for fun, I threw in the other day. It took me about 10 minutes to do it, and I thought, if Matt O'Reilly goes, here's the top 10 players I would go to, and there were a couple of completely unrealistic options in there. But at the same time, I didn't find it hard to go and just look at players who I thought could come in and do a job at a certain value and a certain type of caliber of player. To give you an example, one was Dele Alli, a player who is, he's had substantial life challenges to overcome, and credit to him for doing that. But he's currently without a club. He's 28 years old, a former England international, a guy who was tearing it up in the Premiership a few years ago for Spurs. And as we know, we're a club that's pretty good at rehabilitating players. When you look at Craig Gordon, for example. So there's one that pulled out a hat, no problem. You'd like to think your recruitment team, or Brendan and IE and other that's doing this at the moment, would easily be able to come up with some potential targets and have a short list and say, yep, there's the 5 guys for that position, there's 5 guys for that position. But it's the lack of insight and transparency that causes a problem. Just looking at a comment. Yes, I have. It was either that or Football Manager. How did you guess? Did you guess this? So look, just to change it up a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the positives we've seen this season already. So, Patrick, bring it over to you. Let John have a wee drink of water there, and get himself geared up again. But first couple of games, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of players. So, first one I want to bring up is Nicholas Kuhn, a player who I think it's fair to say was subject to some criticism when he first joined, maybe not necessarily through too much fault of his own, but he's now starting to maybe repay some of the manager's faith and the faith in signing him, isn't he?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, he's played really well. I think he's scored in all 3 games so far. Looks really exciting. Obviously, buying into Brendan's system by pressing the Hibs goalkeeper for that 3rd goal. And I mean, he's came on leaps and bounds compared to where he was. Obviously, he was a bit of a shambles, and me and John didn't slag him once, didn't we, John? We've always rated him. We've never given him any grief whatsoever.
No.
But others might have criticised him somewhat
Shocking.
when he first came in. They're disgraceful, aren't they? But we've always backed him, and it came out. Obviously we're getting tore right into him, but it came out later that he'd had a few teeth removed. He'd lost a lot of weight. I think he hadn't trained in a wee while, so. I mean, he was really bad in those games, but Callum McGregor back in April when he came back from an injury was terrible. I remember Kyogo a few years ago. I think he came on the semi-final.
Or
It was pretty shocking. And I mean, when players come back from time off, they do look a yard or 2 off. So totally understandable. But came in. I don't know if he set the world alight at the end of last season. He contributed. He played okay, but I mean, this season he started really well. Him and Maeda and Forrest, I should say, appear to be the 3 wingers of choice. Unfortunately, due to the predicament we found ourselves in the weekend, he did just come in. Kyogo, his shoulder was acting up a bit, so we had to play Maeda through the middle. But those 3 appear to be the main wingers. Yang and Palmer came on, didn't look anywhere near the quality of the first 3 that I mentioned. So, I think going into the derby, it'll be interesting to see who starts in the right wing. I'm pretty confident Maeda's going to start on the left. I think we're all really looking forward to Maeda starting on the left. That should be a really enjoyable day out, as long as we don't sell him beforehand. But no, I mean, Kuhn, of the starting 11, I mean, you're genuinely looking at a really, really promising starting 11.
Yes.
Obviously we can upgrade on Taylor and Scales, and 1 or 2 might drop out, and like O'Reilly, hopefully will be the only one. But the starting 11's actually looking really good, and you can see it because we're playing some really nice stuff. But when you look at the squad, there's just a massive drop-off, and I think that's where the big disappointment comes from. A failure to improve the 1 or 2 positions that we needed to, and then a failure to improve the squad.
I think that's a great point. And it's one of the things we've spoken about a lot, is that we have squad depth. What we don't have is quality and depth. We don't. I mean, but let's face it, we've got 2 defenders there that we paid big money for, and Lagerbielke, although, as you say, maybe away on loan, and Nawrocki. But they don't seem like remotely close to coming into the first team, and they certainly don't seem to have certainly the trust of the manager at the moment. Couple of minutes left. Just another player I want to touch on. This might be a slightly controversial one, but we talk about the quality in the first 11 and how well we've started the season, and actually, for the most part, you're pretty well equipped domestically. What about Liam Scales then? Is Liam Scales the first choice centre back for the rest of the season, and do we bring in someone to back him up, or is he the one player that we have to replace? Because for all the criticism, some of it justified, that he's had last season, this season he's not really put much of a foot wrong, has he?
I mean, I thought the first 20 minutes at Hibs he was a bit of a disaster. I thought he made a good few mistakes against Hibs. At Easter Road, I should say, in the league game a week and a half ago. I thought he played well at the weekend. Obviously, we conceded from a set piece. He's one of the taller centre halves. Should maybe do better, but it's the next 9 days. Are going to answer that question. Whatever we do in the next 9 days, if we don't sign a centre half for a pretty substantial fee, then he will be the starting left centre half all season, assuming he doesn't get injured. And that's a worry going into the European games. I'll be honest, I've got very little to no concerns about winning the league this season, and maybe that will get clipped in 9 months' time, and I'll be dead embarrassed on follow. But I've got very little concerns about winning the league. It really is the two cups, because they're one-off games. How comfortable we win the league, because it should have been a lot more comfortable last season, and how we perform in the Champions League, because I think a club who is turning over 120 million every time. I mean, if we qualify for the Champions League, we turn over 120 million, near enough. And I think a club like that should be capable of winning 3 games and getting into that playoff position in the new format. So, to answer your question, I think Scales is actually going to end up being our starting left centre half.
It'll be interesting to see that. While we want to go clip, I'm already going to go back and clip see if I can find the clips of you and John supporting Kuhn back in the second half of last season, so I can pull that one up. Listen, unfortunately, we are out of time. That really went a lot quicker than I expected, and despite the frustrations and that we're kind of putting out there, there are lots of positives on the park at the moment in terms of the way the team's playing. Managers got to get a tune out of them, and it would be so great if we could keep that momentum going for the season. Look, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone that's viewing across all the platforms, and for all the comments and contributions. And if for anybody I did accidentally ban again, I apologise. I'm still trying to get used to it. This is not a pen; it's actually a touchscreen thing. But I'm all fingers and thumbs. I'm not very good at that, so I apologise for that. Paul John will be back on tomorrow's bulletin unless he's in mourning if Matt O'Reilly gets sold, in which case I might have to step in. And we'll be bringing you another one of our Friday night shows. This is Acsom with another guest that is relevant to a Celtic state of mind. As we say, it's not always former players, because if we did that every week, we'd soon run out of them. So we do have people from the world of media, journalism, theatre, etc. Well, and maybe for this weekend. So, but we appreciate all your support on that show, and it's certainly doing brilliant numbers. So glad you're enjoying it. Listen, if you haven't already, give us a wee thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. All remains for me to say is thank you again to Big John, Yogi Hughes, Patrick McGill. Really appreciate having you on, guys, and that has been Wednesday's Acsom, a Celtic State of Mind bulletin. Thank you.
Hail, hail.